and welcome to ET Now Startup Central, India's first and only daily show dedicated to startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Chandra Shrikant, joining you live from India's startup capital, Bengaluru.
I'm Krishna Kumar, coming to you live from ET Now's Mumbai studios. We do, as usual, have a power-packed 20 minutes lined up for you. But first up, I check on all that's making headlines here at ET Now's Startup Central. It's not often that you hear about a startup that aims for the moon, and quite literally at that. Team Indus, an aerospace startup and India's only team to qualify for Google's Lunar X Prize, is preparing itself to land an aircraft on the moon by December 2017. Even as the buzz gets stronger every week about Chinese internet giant Alibaba's impending India entry, the Times of India reports today that Alibaba is in talks to acquire online marketplace ShopClues and might eventually merge this with Paytm's marketplace. Microsoft recently hosted its first ever conference on machine learning and data sciences in India, signifying the huge potential they see in the country. And they're now keen to increase their engagement as enterprises and the government open up to manage vast amounts of data. An exclusive chat with Microsoft coming up. Another big voice from the Valley, James Snow, Global Product Strategist for Security and Compliance at Google. He says that India will need more cloud-based solutions, and Google is looking at doing away with passwords completely. And you will no more need an Uber app to book a ride. Uber has launched two interesting features. One, allowing customers to book rides on its web app, and also allowing them to book rides for their friends and family.
Straight to our top story then, Krishna. Now, even as the buzz about Chinese internet giant Alibaba's impending India entry gets stronger with every week, the Times of India has reported today that Alibaba may be in discussions to acquire online marketplace ShopClues, which, remember, is in the unicorn list, and they might eventually merge ShopClues' marketplace with that of Paytm. Remember, Alibaba is already a strategic investor in Paytm through Alipay. But I really don't know how seriously we should take this, or if this is part of the multiple rounds of discussions that Alibaba seems to be having with various players, because each week we report a different player. They are in discussions with Flipkart, they're in discussions with Snapdeal, they're in discussions with ShopClues today. But I guess one player that remains constant there is clearly Paytm. So anything that they do as far as the business to consumer marketplace is concerned has to have the Paytm component in it. Now, as far as the valuation is concerned, I guess ShopClues is much more reasonable compared to, say, a Flipkart or a Snapdeal. It just became a billion-dollar enterprise this year. So from that point of view, it may make more sense for Alibaba. But that's not the only reason why Alibaba is in news. Even as they are pursuing all these multiple deals, they are also scouting for office space in Bengaluru, where their corporate headquarters for India is likely to come up. So, you might have bad infrastructure, lakes that are overflowing, but when it comes to internet giants and startups, I guess, Krishna, Bengaluru continues to hold its charm.
Chandra, I know that you have that beaming expression on your face as you're telling us this big news about Alibaba scouting for office space in Bengaluru is concerned. No doubts, Chandra, Bengaluru is certainly the IT capital and the startup capital of the country. But keep in mind, Bombay, or Mumbai rather, is catching up pretty quick, and Bangalore needs to be on its feet. But also, Chandra, one more thing about Paytm's market.
We will be on our feet.
I'm sure. About Paytm's marketplace, we were just in conversation with Vijay Shekhar Sharma just last week, and he spoke about how Big Bazaar is going to be the big anchor store on Paytm's online marketplace. Now, you put that along with Alibaba's entry, which means that Big Bazaar is going to be the anchor store on Alibaba's Indian marketplace, and that is absolutely stunning. But moving on here to another stunning piece of news on the show. It's not often that you hear about a startup that aims for the moon, and quite literally at that. Team Indus, an aerospace startup and India's only team to qualify for Google's Lunar X Prize, is preparing itself to land an aircraft on the moon by December 2017. And today, We take you inside their headquarters to give you a sneak peek on what goes on behind the scenes. Rahul Narayan also catches up with Rahul Narayan, co-founder at Team Indus, to know where they stand now, fundraising plans, and how confident they are to land on the moon. Take a look.
I knew then that this is going to take this long. I'm not sure I would have signed up, but I guess that's the thing about in order to be able to dare to do something this complex, something that has such a low probability of success, you need to be innocent enough to not to know the complexities. So that allowed us to do things differently. That allowed us to not be afraid of the set norms, and we still made a few mistakes, but I thought we had more good decisions than bad, which is why we continued progressing. I thought we caught more lucky breaks than the unlucky ones, which is why we managed to get this kind of support that we got in the system. So although at that time when we were starting off, we were barely a dozen odd people, now we've grown to 100 plus, and we intend to be at about this size by the time we fly for the moon.
Funding is something that you were closely looking at. So, where are you in terms of being adequately funded? Because a lot of these, the investment that goes into it, you will also, I believe, outsource it from various other countries. So, where are you in terms of well-funded to reach there?
Money is an important part. Any kind of investment into a product or a program that has a long-term horizon is always a challenge. We've been fortunate that we found supporters who backed it for what it means for them, for us as a country, and that has been the main force that has kept us going till this point in time. Otherwise, we've had literally no revenues over the last 5 years, and that's not a way that a startup can survive. Going forward, we have the big task. So this is probably going to end up costing us anything between $60 to $70 million from start to finish. Some amount of that we've already raised and spent. A significant amount of that now needs to be raised and spent over the next 5 quarters.
I want to pause by for a minute, and if you could take us through the rover and really demystify it for us. A lot of us have watched movies. We've closely tracked how US got there, China got there a few years back. But if you could just tell us in terms of this rover is what would land on the moon?
This is a micro rover category. It's sub 12 kgs, about 12 kgs right now. We'll probably bring it down to about 10 kgs in mass, which is extremely optimized for the kind of activity and the terrain that this has to function in. The constraint usually is power. So this is solar powered. We don't have any other source of power. It's got about 30 watts of solar power panels on board. This is a unique design by way of the locomotion itself. It's got linkages on one side and fixed wheels on the others, and it is designed whereby at any given point in time on an unknown terrain, at least 3 wheels will always be in touch with the ground. So that's the design, and that's the first principal part of it that we had to get into. It's carrying 2 high-definition cameras. This is a 3D printed model of it. We are using this to test the operations, test the electronics, test the assumptions that we made when designing it. And right now, I would say we're about 90% complete by way of engineering closure on what we want to build. The next phase would be by the end of this year. We should hopefully be able to get to a point when the engineering on the rover is complete.
How has it been like working with ISRO scientists for this mission?
That is our secret sauce. Our secret sauce is that we're able to pick up the energy, get hold of the energy and enthusiasm that a very young engineering graduate who wants to come out and do something other than software, and then to be able to marry that with the experience that all the ISRO scientists that we have on board have learned through their tenure at ISRO. So very fortunate. We started off by signing Dr. R.K. Sharma. He was part of VSSC, right now a professor at Karunia University. He was a first advisor and mentor who guided us through the process of how would you get to the moon? How would you start from Earth orbit where a launch vehicle would leave you, and how do you get to the moon? So that was the starting point. Right now we have close to 24 retired ISRO scientists who work in an advisory capacity, a review capacity, a design capacity, and a managerial capacity. So best of both worlds, if I could say that, and the fact that we managed to make this combination work. This is a combination that has been working very well now for 2.5 years at least. So an output that you see, the optimized rover, you probably see the spacecraft a little later, is an outcome of marrying experience with energy and keeping them on track to go to the moon instead of going to the Mars. The energy can at times take you further than where you want to go.
All right, December 2017, I believe, is the deadline. So where do you stand now? And also it's about which team gets there first. Also, so by when is it, what timeline are you working on to really get that?
So December 2017 is when the competition closes. We are aiming for a launch sometime in the last quarter of 2017. By way of engineering, the design and the prototyping part of it is complete. So that's what I was talking about, the rover. So all the assumptions, all the validations that we had to do, all the analysis that we have to do has been completed. We've just started work on building the protoflight model. So the protoflight model is a new kind of a modeling strategy or philosophy that we're using in order to save time and cost. And we expect this to be ready early next year. Once the protoflight model of the lander is ready, as the rover is ready, we're going to put it through extensive tests which will go on for 3, 4, 5 months, and then it finally goes over to ISRO for a potential checkout and integration with the launch vehicle.
Team Indus, they're literally working on a moonshot idea, but I certainly hope they do very well for themselves, Krishna, because it's inspired a whole lot of people, very different kind of startup to really come out of Bangalore. But with that, we move on to another interesting story where Microsoft held its first ever data science and machine learning conference in India recently, really signifying the potential that they see here, and they also plan to work closely with enterprises and the government going forward. Now, Microsoft's corporate VP for data, Joseph Sirosh, spoke to Rahul Narayan about the focus areas for them going forward. Let's listen in.
We've had some amazing work done out of India. For example, machine learning being used for predicting school dropout in Andhra Pradesh, to predict eye corrections by L.V. Prasad Institute, sowing time for farmers. So there were so many of these really touching examples that we felt it was very, very interesting to showcase. And so Bangalore was an ideal location. Bangalore also happens to have a pretty good data science community and machine learning.
But you're talking about businesses with data really at the core of their operations, mobile really being their big revolution. So there's so much data around. So what opportunity does India throw for Microsoft?
Yeah, it's a tremendous amount of opportunity. Now, think about, again, all of these examples in public sector that I mentioned, school dropout prediction. You're talking about 440 million children in India. And a large fraction of them actually attend school irregularly, and many of them drop out. And you can now predict the probability of dropout by school, by student. And being able to improve that dropout through prediction and preventing that, educating children much better. I mean, the vast wealth of opportunities we have in India is so huge. So the applications can touch our entire daily lives. And so that's one huge area. And then there's a very vibrant startup ecosystem that happens in Bangalore, especially in mobile and others, where data and machine learning is actually being used for ad targeting, marketing applications, recommendations to improve customer experience.
Which other sectors do you see that you could leverage as far as machine learning is concerned?
Well, healthcare is a big area. When you have 1.2 billion people, and we have so much data around individuals and health conditions and their demographics. So being able to improve quality is a quality of every service, healthcare, government services, and so on. Those are some of the most interesting areas. Now, of course, banks and other organizations have traditionally used data. We can take them to a new level with machine learning and the cloud. And then there are these cognitive APIs which are becoming very, very interesting, such as face detection, image understanding, understanding text, speech recognition, bringing all of that to help improve service, help improve detection, even in certain areas detecting fraud. All of those are really interesting.
All right. While Microsoft says that it wants to democratize the entire process of big data analytics, one would say that Google has its open platform with Google Analytics. So, would your strategy change going forward?
Well, in fact, Microsoft is actually one of the most open platforms. We host open source. For example, R is one of the languages for analytics and machine learning, and we have integrated R with SQL Server, with the cloud, with every product. So, in fact, by the way, over 30% of virtual machines in Microsoft's cloud are Linux. And so, in fact, we are far ahead in terms of openness of the platform and adopting open source and delivering that to customers through cloud-based services.
All right, Chandra, it looks like it's an avalanche of voices from the Valley here on the show. Another big one. This time it's James Snow, Global Product Strategist for Security and Compliance at Google. And he says that India will need more cloud-based solutions, and Google is looking at doing away with passwords completely in the future. That is an exciting future to look forward to. Speaking to me, Snow started off by talking about how Indian companies should look to outsource security systems. Take a look.
Instead of trying to make and invent all your systems yourselves, there are several providers out there, Google, Amazon, etc., multiple providers who specialize in this. And Google, we invest in security. Just in security means over $2 billion every year for security programs. We have all of our software is open source, it's tested. We want hackers to try and break it, that sort of thing. Security that isn't tested isn't real security. Now, in terms of what recommendations I would give to the government. So firstly, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. So what we talk about at Google is having multiple systems for availability and redundancy. So if one system was compromised or one system went down or something terrible happened, it would not fully affect the system. At Google, we have production and backup systems that have completely different and independent means of encryption.
Where do you think India as a digital market, is in terms of a stage of evolution? Is it too nascent, or I'm sure some of the best innovations come from here. But in terms of an ecosystem for security and compliance, where exactly is India?
Well, most of our customers, so whether they're a very small, mom and pop shops, all the way up to some of the largest companies in the world, they all partner with Google. I think upwards of 60% of the Fortune 500 are using us. And that's not just businesses, it's also government bodies and agencies. Now,
James, that is the world, Fortune 500. Let's talk India.
Right. So if I was talking about India, we're exceedingly strong, I'd say, in the startup industry. I think we had Flipkart who was speaking to us today. They're quite good. We're also quite good in manufacturing. We're big in steel. We're moving into regulated industries as well. Also, in terms of education, Google Apps for Education is also very, very popular. Now, so I think that this is the adoption is starting to ramp up, right? As India becomes more and more connected, they're going to be looking at more and more of these solutions because people want to be, cloud is the only way that you're going to be able to work remotely or work on the devices or enable kind of the mobile India going forward.
Where is cloud in India in terms of how safe it is?
Certainly. So again, this will be application, but the thing that I would focus on is saying, regardless if you're using a Facebook or a Google or some of these other solutions, there are going to be things that you should do to protect your account. So easy ones are things like multi-factor authentication, where you have a token or a code. But even that at Google, we see that as being a very dated way of doing things. We actually want to get rid of passwords entirely using combinations of fingerprints, retinal ideas. I might have a ring that needs to be near my phone in order to be unlocked. So we want to make it difficult for the hackers to do that. So we're gonna see security measures being put in place, but it's going to be security measures that are easy to use, that your mom can use, and also the guy in the IT space can use. So it's about having those things in place and encouraging users to do so.
Over to another interesting story, in fact a story that all of us can use, because Uber has now come up with two features, Krishna, one of which means that you don't need the Uber app anymore to really book an Uber ride. They've given a URL, a web app, so to speak. So, just by using that URL, you can book a ride on Uber. And this is basically aimed at users, particularly from smaller towns, who own low-end smartphones. They have, storage issues, all those issues. But I'm sure it's something that all of us can really use, considering we constantly run out of space on our phones with more and more apps getting installed. But the other interesting feature coming from Uber is that you can now book a ride for your friends, for your family. So, sometimes you want to book a ride from your phone from someone else, and then the driver ends up calling you. That's not going to happen anymore because of this feature. Remember, this is coming, of course, at an interesting time in the midst of that whole Uber versus Ola rivalry in India. And Ola just yesterday spoke about shutting down Taxi for Sure completely. So I guess they are going through a phase of consolidation. But with that, we come to our final segment of the day, Number Crunch, and we have a huge number lined up for you. It's $246.35 billion. Believe it or not, that's the current market cap of Chinese internet giant Tencent, and more importantly, it's now overtaken Alibaba to become China's most valuable technology company. Of course, as we all know, Baidu, Alibaba and Tencent are really the powerful trio in China when it comes to internet business. But now with Tencent overtaking Alibaba, it's an interesting equation. Remember, they invested earlier this week in Hike, and Tencent also has a hugely popular messaging app called WeChat in China.
Tencent, Chandra, whoever thought of naming that company that, considering it's now valued at $246.35 billion. That is number crunching at its best. On that note, we have to wrap things up here on this edition of ET Now Startup Central. Thank you so much for watching, but don't go anywhere. Keep it with ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.